Starburst, so it's stuck in my mouth.
Wait a second. Oh, you can't even chew that fast.
No. Oh, good. Hi, everybody. Caught me chewing a Starburst. Welcome to our executive session of June
Work session,
14th.
work session.
Our work session of June 14th, 2022. Can I have a motion to open the work session?
I move to open the work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, well, I finished chewing. Jill, would you like to take it away?
Yes, so we have here tonight Vivek Agasta from the Sustainability Advisory Board, who is here to give us an update on Westchester Power, Sustainable Westchester, and the current pause, PAUSE, that is going to be affecting the residents of Newcastle who have signed up for Westchester Power. Vivek, why don't you come and take it away?
Sure. Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
So yeah, this has been a long issue that we've been dealing with, this Westchester Power renewal, right? As you know, Sustainable Westchester came and spoke to you all a couple of times, and I think I've given you an update in Kent as well. And you've had a couple of MOUs in front of you that I think the town's signed, each time the rate's going up from there. So where it last ended up was we had like a 13.9 cent per kilowatt hour price that we'd agreed to in an MOU, and they did not get any bids at that price level. And the background to that is all the macroeconomic issues going around. Oil prices, crude oil prices are up, natural gas prices are up, US power prices, market prices are set based on natural gas prices, and so those are up as well. And so those of us, the residents of our town that are not members of Westchester Power have already seen their electricity bills go up significantly over the last couple of months. Since the Ukraine war started, it's gone up even further. But even before that, the prices had started to go up, and it's more than doubled over the last, I want to say, 3 to 4 months, and that's the reason why they weren't able to get any bidders. I mean, natural gas prices are still pretty high. I think they're in the $9 per MMBTU level. They were historically they've been like $3-4 per MMBTU, so it's more than double that, and so electricity prices are more than double. The volatility is another thing that a lot of the electricity marketers are a little worried about. They don't want to lock in prices at today's level and then find that it actually even goes up further. So the long and short of it is Sustainable Westchester has decided that they aren't going to lock in prices and they didn't want to come back with another MOU at higher prices. They don't want to lock something in at these levels when it could go back down in like 3 months or 4 months. And so what they're doing, and I think they talked about this in one of the meetings, is they are trying to increase the pool of bidders for the auction. And the way they're trying to do that is they're trying to find someone that, well, they have found a party that can sleeve the contract between the wholesale market and the retail market. And again, I'm not going to go too much into details here. The ESCOs that they go out of contract right now are retail suppliers, and there's only a few. Well, there's a few dozen that qualify for that. But if you are able to go out to the wholesale market, then you've got several dozens, hundreds even of bidders that you could potentially get. So that's what they're trying to. They're trying to find a way to get. They're trying to set their documentation and get the certifications in place that allow them to go to that larger universe of bidders. Theoretically, that should mean lower lower prices than what we have right now. But the other potential benefit of this pause is that we might be able to ride this high market prices, and then they might be able to lock in lower prices if the volatility ends. So that's their goal. I think the dates I've heard are like October, November timeframe, but they're trying to speed up that process and see if they can get the bids in sooner than that. But in the meantime, about 77% of our town is on the Westchester Power Plan. All of us will get defaulted back into Con Ed variable pricing. So we are all gonna see that increase in prices, more than doubling of prices starting July 1st. So there's gonna be a significant increase in all of our power bills. Hopefully that's only for 4 or 5 months, and then we're able to Westchester Power is able to lock in our prices at stable levels again in the future. So that's the goal. I think it's important that we communicate with all our residents that this is happening and why it's happening and what their options are. So we at the Sustainability Advisory Board have put together a list of things that people can do. Really honestly, the best thing to do is to conserve electricity to write out this increase. That's probably what everyone should be doing anyway. But we have a list of steps that residents should focus on. So we've got a Sustainable Westchester has sent out a letter. People should start seeing that come in maybe today, tomorrow, sometime this week. We have proposed sending a postcard from the town as well, and Jill have provided you with with the talking points on that. I think our message is a little simpler and it gets straight to the meat of the subject. And along with that, we're proposing to update the Sustainability Advisory Board's website, the town website, our page on it to provide this information and then provide those electricity bill saving tips as well. That's it. That's my update.
So, thank you, Vivek. So one of the things that the board should be aware of is that Sustainable Westchester released a letter to all the participants in their program, and unlike in the past, they didn't give each municipality an opportunity to review the letter and to vet it. So the letter that Sustainable Westchester has sent out isn't as clear and concise as we would have liked. It would not have been the message that we sent out to our residents. The town and SAB especially taking the lead has worked really hard at what's the best way to put this? Explaining to our residents very effectively the benefits of this program. And as a result, 77% of our residents are actually participating in this. And is it 95% of those are on renewable?
98.5%.
98.5% of those 77 percentage is on renewables, which is just, they're fabulous numbers. And we are, deeply disappointed for a number of reasons that, the political and economic climate is what it is that resulted in this. But we just wanted to be really clear with our residents and make sure that they understood that this was a temporary switch, that they were being switched to Con Ed because there really was no other alternative, but as soon as there was an alternative, that they would be switched right back. We just want to make sure that we're very transparent with them. And so that was the hope with the SAB taking and crafting their own message that perhaps is a little bit simpler and a little bit more concise than Sustainable Westchester's was.
Yeah, I'll add that this program has helped significantly decrease our carbon footprint. With that 98.5% of our participants, right, which is roughly 3/4 of all the electricity that we use in this town is essentially coming from renewable sources now because of this and that. We'd like to navigate these next few months and end up in a situation where we can get the vast majority of these participants back into the program, back into that renewable energy rate, because we want to be able to. That's our mission at the Sustainability Advisory Board, and part of that is to help our residents navigate this time, and we don't want people signing up to an escrow in this period of time and locking themselves up to, potentially higher prices for a longer period of time. If they do that, then they wouldn't be able to get opted back in when, in the fall. So that's part of what we're trying to achieve, and we think that by communicating well, we can achieve that.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think even when we thought there was gonna be a temporary scenario, we had talked about communications being key to the equation. I think what the SAB is proposing makes a lot of sense, but we definitely have to think about what we're doing on the town level, because on social media and whatnot, this is gonna become a big issue. I think people are gonna be shocked at what they're dealing with, and so to preempt that by looking at conservation opportunities, et cetera, and letting people know this is coming is.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, we
I'm
were
particularly
very-
concerned about people locking themselves into a high rate, thinking that they're going to, save some money eventually.
Well, I think
with
people are
Con Ed, so
gonna
I'm
get
concerned about that.
scared because we were very sheltered here, at least the 77% who were part of this, that when residents in other municipalities that didn't have this saw huge skyrockets in their bills, we didn't for the most part because we were locked in. Well, now, unfortunately, we're no longer locked in, and I'm concerned we are going to see that, well, I'm sure we are.
For sure.
And then people are gonna try to figure out how to minimize that, so.
So what is this? This you handed us.
So
What is
this is the this is a draft mailer that SAB has taken and put together. You're missing the back part that says important, I just didn't do the back part.
Okay. Yeah,
Important information about your electric bill and the residents' information.
And this is just gonna be mailed to residents?
Well, so this is one of the things that we were bringing up with the board tonight. So Sustainable Westchester is physically mailing a letter.
Right,
To
no,
residents.
that I get, this is something that we would do from the town or the right, okay. My personal opinion is people aren't gonna read this. I would think you need some big headline, giant bold print that says, electricity prices are about to skyrocket, and then there needs to be a much more succinct summary of what that is. Because I'm reading this and I'm thinking about what you just said about Sustainable Westchester's mailer.
Oh, that's like 3 times the size.
No, I get it, but again, think about just the average person gets a flyer in the mail, and I personally, that's just my view, I don't know whether the rest of the board agrees, but I think it needs to be a much more like the headline, you kind of bury the lead a little bit. I think the headline needs to be not that Westchester Power's contract ends at that time, will be temporarily transferred at default variable rate. It has to be electricity prices may double soon, and then an explanation.
We don't have any pride of authorship here.
Yeah,
so
no, no,
we're
and
happy to
I'm
dig
not-
in.
I'm not-
with-
Attention grabbing,
I'm literally just thinking I'm just thinking about what the message is trying to be here. That's just my only take on this.
Yeah,
All this
I want
information is
this-
obviously great, but I just think it needs to really grab you, because if you don't,
Mhm.
then we miss an opportunity to make the point as clearly
I
as possible.
agree.
That red portion up there, maybe that's where we tweak the message to put that, is that?
I would say absolutely. I mean, again, I read that when you were speaking, I was reading this a little bit, trying to pay attention, but so I wasn't really reading it, but reading it and just thinking, where is the punchline? And
So, yeah, I think the red part can actually be in this box, cause I think what's in the box is important information, but to Chris's point, we need to explain to people, look, through no fault of ours, we sheltered you for the last 2 years, your rates are now gonna potentially double. This is why, but we are on it and we are aware, right now, you're gonna be transferred back to Con Ed, but we're gonna get you back on, a negotiated rate as soon as possible. And get that there so people know what to expect, they know we told them, and then, yeah, the stuff in the box is important to let them know what they need to do, it answers questions. But to Chris's point, I think we really
the only
need
thing I
to
would
let
add is
people know.
and I don't know how feasible this is, but I think we should have some contact in town for people, as opposed to just forwarding them to
I have to laugh because Vivek has been the point person
I'm
on
sure,
SAB
I'm sure.
for
No, I can
years,
imagine.
talking people,
Right.
answering questions and
So that would be my
you
only
know,
suggestion.
doing a fabulous job, clearly.
What about really cutting this back and just having a few bullets, you already have the link, and have it mostly residing online, and if it's big, to Chris's point, if it's big bold letters, something horrible is coming this way, and it is what it is, you need to educate yourself, and this is what's happening, follow this link to learn more. That's gonna be, I think, much more impactful in my opinion, as opposed to someone like me who needs my glasses, I'm gonna be like,
Right.
"Ah."
Yeah,
we can do
I'm
that.
not, I'm not looking at it now, but what I would say is when you put out things like this, you want the public to read, you have to have, like Chris and Jeremy are saying, a headline, and then your main points just as headings, subheadings, so that someone can just read the headline and the bold subheadings and know everything that you're about to say. So for all of the, the paragraphs here where you have some verbiage, and I agree, it's very succinct and well done, but you just wanna synthesize that into your one sentence or your short sentence and put that as a heading.
Yeah, we can
And
do
then, yeah,
And then
so
we'll
that's
put your
what I would do
personal cell
in
phone
general.
number on there.
Not a-
There's an email address.
I didn't mean to open you up to that,
You already got
I
it.
just think
No,
it's
no,
not,
you're right.
it's not quite as personal to say, go on our website and look at Westchester Power as opposed to, if you have questions, contact.
It might not be on that, but we have somewhere we've got the SAB's web email address that's there, and
Yeah,
we're monitoring it
that's perfect.
Yeah, that's
every day,
perfect.
so we'll make sure that that's on whatever goes out, yeah.
Well, my only question is though, is the SAB prepared and equipped to deal with an onslaught should one transpire?
Well,
But I think if we make this understandable enough, and I'm gonna put something in the supervisor's report too that says, I think if people understand it, they may not actually they'll be annoyed, but they may not have that, I don't think people are gonna have that many questions
I just
actually.
remember a few months ago, there were a number of senior citizens on making Facebook posts about the increase in Con Ed prices and whatnot.
But see, that's the sort of thing, as far as the seniors go, we've got a senior newsletter,
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
have some senior events, we have the ability to actually reach out to our seniors through our social worker and stuff like that to let people know that this is coming.
Mhm.
And it's nothing that everybody else hasn't already experienced, to Lisa's point, they've been living in a very, protected bubble. Thank you, Vivek, for all your hard work. And now unfortunately, we just can't shelter them for that much more. So I guess my question to you guys is this, I understand that there is some question about the form the message should take. But are we in agreement that we should be sending out that a mailer is the best way for us to do this?
Yes.
I definitely
Yes.
agree.
I think
I think
multi-channel
one way.
is really key.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, I just, I obviously,
it
In
is free.
addition
once
to
we have
social media and our email, or
Yeah.
town
And
email,
in-person
we-
for seniors
Yeah.
events.
I think
That's
the mailer is great.
because this just takes, as I explained to Ed, this is gonna be a couple weeks before this gets out. We have to reformat it, has to go to a design person, it has to get printed, it has to then go to a mail house, and it has to get mailed.
Not everyone sees the emails or what's on social media, so I think it's, and I do think we should have an in-person session at the senior center, but everybody gets their mail,
Okay,
so I think
And
we should put that out.
are we in agreement that a 5x8 glossy
Yeah,
as opposed to a letter is the better way to
Yes.
go?
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
Great, okay. These are all, conversations that we had internally. I just wanted to make sure that the
Yep.
board is
I
on the
mean,
same
when
page.
you say a couple of weeks, I mean, if they get it on June 30th,
It doesn't really, that's going to be
I'm
the
just-
first
well,
bill.
yeah, it'd be great if we could get it a
Fast.
little before that.
But you can also start online before, do we have to wait?
Yeah, I
for
mean,
it
this
to
message
start
is gonna go out.
Right,
The only thing is that we were hoping that whatever, this formatting looked like, people would recognize it because they had already seen it, in the e-newsletter, and they saw it coming through on a, code red, and they saw it hanging in a poster in the library and one at the community center. And so, we can just put them around. So I was just hoping it would be something like a message that was, like important news from the SAB, electricity prices soar.
Mhm.
Something like that, just so that, when they look at it, they're like, oh, right, I've seen that before, yes, that sounds
Mhm.
familiar.
I actually think it should say important news from the town,
Mhm.
not the, I mean,
Well, it says important news about, yeah, important,
actually,
okay.
we didn't put the SAB name there.
No, it doesn't say
Yeah.
SAB, it just says Town of Newcastle, important information about your electric bill from the Town of Newcastle, that's fine.
but I do think that given that the SAB is involved in this, maybe we don't want it to be glossy, we want it to be a little more environmentally friendly.
That can be a little more expensive.
No.
So,
Done marketing for a long, long time. What you need to do is an envelope with the stamp, it's there, you get open. They're not gonna notice the other stuff.
yeah, well, no, I think we should do a postcard, I don't know, but
You could do, yeah, but
But
I'm also saying
look
to
into
put
when
it-
we print it if there are any
to
options.
put it in an 8.5 by 11, if you need to get it out, I could talk to somebody to do it. The
Yeah,
other
no,
thing-
we can get it out, we
Well,
got
but
it.
the other thing is that I was gonna mention,
Oh, we should do public comment at the.
John, we're not, yeah, can we do public comment later? This is
I'm not
just the
doing
work
public
session.
comment on this, I'm
Okay.
just saying you're right into my wheelhouse now, and that was what never mind, I'll give you a whole bunch of other ways that people are gonna get this,
Okay, sounds
not to
good.
worry.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
SAB's mission would be to do everything digitally, but we recognize that you need to be able to get to people that aren't digitally connected, so.
Right,
That is true.
okay,
Alright,
All right.
thank you.
thank you,
very much,
unfortunately.
Thanks, Vivek.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time.
All right. Okay, what more good news do we have? Are we just moving to, I guess we're moving right to the discussion of the video conferencing policy?
Yes, we are.
Okay, you wanna,
Okay, so last month, the board workshopped the proposed local law that would take advantage of a new state statute that allows public boards to meet virtually, provided that they follow certain requirements. One of the requirements, and really the heart of this, is that a quorum of the board, I'll say 5-person board, so 3 members have to be in the same physical place. But if that box is checked, then 2 other members can participate and vote remotely by video, and they don't need to follow the rule in the old version of the statute that said you had to make your whatever
you have to
place
give
you
your
were.
hotel room.
Exactly. Alright, so it's a nice change to be able to take advantage of. One of the other requirements that I mentioned is that the municipality has to adopt a policy to essentially set out rules of the road for conducting these meetings via video conference. So what you have in the work session packet tonight then is a draft policy, much of which is very prescriptive because the requirements in terms of when you could take advantage of the video conference option because you can't be there in person, those are all laid out in the statute. So the statute talks about extraordinary circumstances, then gives some examples. So that comes right out of the statute, really can't be changed. What we could be talking, the board could and should discuss tonight is more so in the section, certainly section D, which talks about offers some rules of etiquette, public participation in section E. But most of what you see in certainly the introduction is just kind of it's an introduction. Whatever all the content you see in B, section B of this policy, again comes from the statute, really not a lot that can be changed there. So with that, it really is up to the board to decide if this policy should be revised in any way. The public hearing that you're gonna open tonight on the local law, we had thought that there was a need to get this done quickly because the executive order that had issued last month that allowed us to continue with the video conferencing option that we've all gotten used to was set to expire today. But this afternoon, the governor extended that executive order for another 30 days. So there's no rush. We have that 30-day cushion now. So if the board has comments, I'm happy to mark this up or make a note of any changes that you think are appropriate.
I thought it looked pretty straightforward, Ed. You know, like you said, there's very little flexibility. It follows the statute.
Right.
I just, so there's this notion that, you know, in 3, sorry, where's the section? You mentioned board members on vacation and forget where that is in the policy, I'm sorry, I lost it now.
Yeah, where it's very prescriptive about the reasons.
Yeah,
Why?
well, yeah, in other words,
Under
in B one, right, it says members shall be physically present unless, and then it mentions disability, illness, health concerns, caregiving, and then it says another significant or unexpected factor. But then later, it seemed like, you know, you could just not be here if you're able to do it by video conference. In other words, is it if it's not one of those, if someone says, look, I'm you know, traveling that day to visit, you know, family, is that a significant or unexpected factor if they're still able to join by video? Or I'm on vacation, but I'm happy to jump on.
Short answer is I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. What you see in B1 with extraordinary circumstances and the 5 examples that follow come straight from the statute. What we have seen is examples in some other municipalities where there's been a little bit of an effort to put some additional examples in. That's fine, but understand that this is what the statute provides, and if you get too far away from whatever the legislature intended by extraordinary circumstances, you run the risk of not having had a quorum if an action is ever challenged. So
But you need 3 in person anyway.
correct.
So if you have 3 in person, you
quorum
have a
anyway.
quorum no matter what. So my point is, if someone wants to participate remotely and thereby be able to vote and actually be counted, I know that it can't be considered for quorum purposes, but you need to have 3 in person anyway. So if the 4th is on vacation but says, I'm happy to jump on because we're about to discuss something that's important, is that okay or is that
So
not allowed?
are you asking, Krista, in other words, if you have the quorum, the only question is whether that person who's outside the quorum can vote or not?
Exactly,
But
because
I don't think you need 3
because
people in person.
no, you do. No, you do.
Isn't that
So
right?
let me
I
just
thought-
finish.
I thought you needed 2 plus another at a location that could be attended by the public.
That's a possibility.
No,
So
but
that's
again,
the
again, I
key
just wanna
to
finish
it.
my question here. B1 says significant or unexpected factors, right? If you have people in person, right, and a 4th wants to participate, I know that it wouldn't be counted for quorum purposes. I'm just trying to understand if that person can participate in the meeting.
So the state FAQ I saw actually said saying I winter in Florida is not reason to be able to do this and to vote. So I actually think you should be able to do it if you happen to be on vacation and you say, you know what, I'm on vacation, but I'd like to participate in the meeting. It allows you to participate more than you could before, but we have to make sure that it doesn't conflict too much with them saying, well, no, that it has to be a real reason that's an exigent circumstance.
Right, I mean, I would worry about this, I think state law is notorious for being unclear, but I would worry about this if your 3rd person is not in person and is relying on the the provision that requires them to be at a publicly accessible location.
Right.
And in that case, that's what I would worry about this.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I mean, that's a scenario that I wrote, is like, does that mean Lisa and Jeremy are here and Vicky says, I'll be at Starbucks at Chappaqua Crossing, and you notice it and say people can come to sit with me at Chappaqua Crossing Starbucks. I mean, that's a
I
very.
think that would have to be
Yeah, I don't
an
actually
extraordinary
I personally think that's a very
circumstance.
strange, I can't imagine any of us doing that, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we're all gonna at least try to make sure we have 3 people present here to satisfy quorum. And then I'm just literally thinking, you know, in a flexible world, the idea that we could also have other board members who are able to video conference in so that everyone's able to participate. And that would be ideal.
I think you just need the 3 votes to be properly present. Whether it's 3 in person or 2 in person and 1 having met the B1 requirements.
But so the problem is the
Yeah.
B1 requirements, if somebody has to be able to come to your house, if you're actually home sick, you don't want people showing up at your
But the law,
house
that's
or
what
you
the law
have
says.
illness, so I would actually wanna say that people should be, 3 people need to be present in the same place. And then the other 2 can
But that's what you
Was
would
regarded
want,
as a
but
challenge.
that's
Yeah.
what, but that's not what the law, we're just trying to figure out what the law is saying, so
Well, we can be more restrictive than the law.
Conservative
I suppose,
interpretation,
Yeah,
right?
and yeah, exactly, and interpret it conservatively.
But again, the B1 is you shall be physically present unless you meet one of these extraordinary circumstances. So if you're sick, you don't have to be physically present, but you can still be counted,
Yes.
Correct.
right? So that all makes sense.
But the three, for
Three still have to be here, right?
purposes, right.
My only point is, again, just trying to envision a scenario where someone's traveling, it would seem to be unfortunate if we're allowing for video conference attendance and that person can't participate and have his or her vote counted, that's all,
but
that's all.
if that person is not part of the three that are present somehow, according to the statute, then
Yeah,
I
person's
don't
on-
think you need
person's
to
on
worry that much, unless the vote is not unanimous.
No, well, I mean, look, I mean, you would worry, I'm trying to understand if there's flexibility here, because you'll already have a quorum, 3 people are physically present. If the law is allowing for that additional flexibility, it would seem to be a gap or an unfortunate, omission, or maybe overly restrictive to not say, you know what, if the other 2 can make it, why not let them make it? That's my only point. Why limit it to the other 2 can't make it only because of an unexpected factor? And then frankly, what you would just do is just say, oh, sorry, I can't make it tomorrow, something came up.
Right, I mean, I think
Seems
it's
odd.
unclear, and what happens is that you extrapolate from what's not said to what makes sense based on what the statute is saying.
I
When
agree that the
intent is
scenario
not
outline is
clear at
probably
all.
not contemplated,
Yeah.
because they specifically say unexpected circumstance, so, I mean.
There's no answer, really, because the law is not clear.
And
I would
it,
worry about that if the third member required for
vote.
quorum doesn't meet the B1
Mm-hmm.
requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if
That's what I worry about it.
if 2 of us are on vacation and we have an important matter to decide, and someone says, I'll be at Starbucks, we probably are risking something, I agree.
Right, we shouldn't do that.
It
So
shouldn't
we
happen
probably
anyway.
shouldn't do that, Vicky.
Yeah.
I know you
No.
want to.
To me, the only reason people should not, 3 people should not be in person all together is if there is an issue with this building and we need to be somewhere else. In that case, we should all be together in that other place, at least 3 of us.
Right.
That's what I don't like or some other place where the public can come.
Right, but that's in existing law.
I know.
That's the law.
But I mean, the law is fine, but our
I
policy
think our policy
should
say.
be that we're all together.
Right, I was just trying to figure out the law itself, not, what, we can
So-
do something more stringent.
So in practice, what we've done, like our summer meetings, we're only meeting once in August. We actually need to pay bills more than once a month. So I will be asking the board, when 3 members are physically present, to come into the conference room and to, approve payment of claims or some other
Right.
modest
Mm-hmm.
thing that needs to be approved. It'll be one day during the latter part of August. And we do this on a routine basis. Other members can, we used to have them call in just so that they could listen, just so that they wouldn't miss on it, anything. But in those instances, we didn't do it.
But now we could.
So in this scenario, do we include their vote?
If they had a qualifying reason.
And that's only the ones in B1.
Right.
Okay.
So if somebody's on vacation, can participate but doesn't count for
They
voting.
can't vote.
Correct.
They can participate just like any other person can participate.
Unless it was an unexpected vacation.
Yes.
Like the hospital.
For health concern, right,
See,
yeah.
Feeling stressed, I need to go to the
Unexpected factor.
Caribbean
Right.
for my health.
Yeah, extraordinary circumstances, let's not lose sight of those words either, that comes out of the statute. So
Yeah.
that's something that is planned, kinda hard to say it's extraordinary in this context.
Okay.
I think in light of COVID, they felt that they had to put something in there to just be an umbrella.
Yeah, keep in mind that the state statute will automatically sunset in 2024, mid-year, and at the beginning of the year, the Committee on Open Governments will issue a report. So this may be somewhat of a work in progress at the state level. This is a step, but not the last step that they take in terms of resetting the open meeting law requirements.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Can I make a comment on this, or is that?
This is not public comment right now, this is a work
Okay.
session. We will, when we move into the public meeting, we're gonna open up a public hearing on it.
It's still on the work session here if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Alright,
So our next items on the work session agenda are just the few administrative items, a payment of claims, adoption of the monthly reports. We've got authorization to purchase water maintenance materials from DPW, authorization to accept vehicle auction results of $802, and Jeremy, for your edification, the total since 2014, drum roll please, $215,218.
great.
And so yeah. And actually the next one will hold until next week, right after. It's workers' comp, yeah.
Yeah.
Great,
Okay,
And that's all we've got for our work session, so
Thank
just move into our
alright, perfect, thank
2016.
you. Okay, so can I have a motion
14, sorry.
to
There was.
adjourn the public hearing and open the adjourn the work session and open the public meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, everybody, welcome now to our town board meeting of Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. Jill, are there any announcements you'd like to give?
No, I just have a couple of little things I'll give during the administrator's report.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm gonna hold most of my supervisor's report, you can read it tomorrow. And I am gonna announce Community Corner. We actually have a lot to announce because we haven't had a public meeting in a while. So while most of these were on the board, I did wanna publicly announce them. And happy birthday, these were already on the Jumbotron. Happy birthday to Lake Dixon, who will be turning 8 years old. And happy birthday to Brady Kaplow, who will be turning 12. Happy birthday to Jack Gaffey, who turned 4. And happy birthday to Jeff Fisher and Coach Kaplow. Charlotte Branco turned 3. And Alexa Marks turned 12. We have a mazel tov to Ty Isaacson on his bar mitzvah. And Ronnie Diamondstein also had a big birthday. Maggie May, her pup, told us it's a milestone. And also this weekend, the town board attended the Court of Honor, I believe, for the Eagle Scouts. So we want to congratulate the newest Eagle Scouts in town, Sam Auerbacher, Daniel Murray, Anthony Resigno, and Conrad Weaver. That was really, we have such impressive kids in our town. Then new ones that have not been on the board yet, but they will be. Happy birthday to Miguel Lucas, who's turned 11 today. Happy 7th birthday to Simon C. and 10th birthday to Alana C. They are brother and sister. Happy 13th birthday to Milena and Delilah Fioretti. Happy birthday to Sophia Tolosa, who will be turning 9. Happy 9th birthday to Caleb Dolan, and happy 17th birthday to Jordan Bikey. I do want to note that, first of all, if they haven't already been up there, please make sure to look for the community's best wishes to you on the electronic sign across from the train station. Please note, we did have some technical difficulties with that sign. So the sign that faced the library was working that side. It is a double-sided sign. The sign facing downtown was not working as well, but they were up there if you looked on both sides. And I believe it's fixed now, I'm hoping. Also, because Chappaqua Central School District has requested that names on the digital sign will now include the first name and just the last initial now, rather than full last names. I have no comment on my views on that, but so just so you know, if we don't, I can announce it here. It will be in the newsletter with last names as you sent them to me, but on the electronic sign it's just gonna be last initials. Okay,
Do you have a
um,
brother and sister with the same birthday, but not twins?
I'm sure they're twins. No,
No, you're
no,
apart.
there was a brother and sister with different birthdays on different days. I
Yeah.
didn't announce the day.
Close.
And then there
But-
was,
but
there
very
were
clo-
two
No, no, but
twins.
the brothers and sisters were very close by.
They were very close, yes, within the
That's
same week.
That must be interesting.
Yes. All right, moving on to our town administrator's report.
Yeah, for the record, my brother and I were a day apart,
Really?
4 years and a day apart, yeah,
Did you ever fight over who got like more attention or?
no. Never. Okay, so the town issued an RFP for brokerage services for Hates Cross Road, 48 Hates Cross Road. We expect those responses back to the end of the month. We'll be back to the board with that information. I just wanted to mention the meeting next week, which is on Wednesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday, because it's actually grievance day on Tuesday. So we'll be meeting on the 22nd. We actually have a very interesting meeting, and I urge everybody to attend. Among the things on the agenda are State Assemblyman Chris Burdick is gonna be joining us with a legislative update. Susan Raybold from Cityscapes will be back with the results of the equipment inventory and to also help us kick off the community survey, which is really super
I
important.
think she's gonna say we have cell issues in town.
And we will be shocked. We would
You know.
text each other, but nobody would get them, so. Anyway, and I just wanted to make note of those two things for next week. Okay,
Thank
that's it for me.
Great, thank you. All right, so now we are gonna open it up for public comment and new business, not on the public hearings, just if you have other public comment or new business, we're happy to take that now. Anyone in the audience?
Well, we've got a big crowd here.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This is not to comment, it's only to understand a little bit.
John, just say your name.
My name is John Ehrlich, Apple Tree Close in the wonderful hamlet of Chappaqua. Now I'm calling to let everybody know a little bit more about what's going on, what are the safety concerns on Route 117, because that issue is absolutely enormous. I mean, 117 is the core and the soul of a good part of our community, as is Route 100. So what I would like to do is be very, very public about those things. Let's make sure everybody knows what the problems are, and to effectuate change in this regard. Could be something as simple as a traffic light or more complicated in repaving. Also making sure that everybody understands what, the paving situation is like. Would make some I think good sense to let everybody know. And in terms of the other issue, which is communication, the communication discussion tonight was of course very, very interesting on the power problem that we have. I'd like to also add, not only do you have a power problem in terms of cost, there's a power problem in terms of continuity. I was privileged to be able to afford to pay $18,000 plus for a generator that saved our gluteus maximus many times. And it's something that we should do to watch for the continuity on this. It's not just cost, it's quality. The quality of wiring has been very problematic, not only that, but also with Cablevision and the other suppliers for cable in town. It's not unusual to lose service 2 or 3 times a day at different times. So I guess we have to check all of our wiring and make sure that we're all hooked up to the best possible solution for our community. Excuse me for talking so loud, but I just wanted to bring up those 2 points, because I won't even talk about the consideration of what's going to be happening at the Performing Arts Center soon, because I am so excited that we're actually going to be there and to work on a ongoing performing arts structure, not only in town in view of the new facilities that will be opening throughout all of Westchester. And thank you very much again for allowing me to chat.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Carrie, is there anyone, no one else is here, so is there anyone online who has public comment or new business?
If anyone's interested in speaking, please raise your digital hand,
What about the folks who were just
and
here?
we don't see any hands.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we are gonna move on to our public hearings now. We have 2 of them tonight. Why don't can we switch it up and do the video conference one first? So I think we're gonna first open a local law to a public hearing about a local law to authorize members of all public bodies of the town of Newcastle to participate in public meetings via video conference. Can I have a motion to open that public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So for those of you listening, we just talked about this a little bit in work session. I think you should probably say a quick word again, just a very, very short summary in case.
This local law would take advantage of a recently enacted state law that allows public boards like the town board and all the statutory boards in the town the option to meet via video conference, provided that certain requirements are met. And we have discussion about what those requirements are. Again, they come from the state statute. It's very prescriptive in nature, so the town is essentially opting into that regime with respect to all of those requirements and procedures.
Okay, and I personally think it's a very good idea, especially in light of COVID, anyone gets ill or has other exigent circumstances, it gives us that flexibility and certainly allows the public to participate via video as well. Does anyone on the town board have any thoughts? Otherwise, we'll open it up to public comment.
I think we should open up public comment.
All right, so we're gonna open it up to public comment. Does anyone have any public comments on this? Anyone online? If you do, please raise your digital hand.
We don't see anyone.
Okay. So I would, hearing no public comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing, leave it open for 7 days for written comments until what date, Jill?
Oh gosh, sorry. It's about to ask Christina. Christina will take care of it.
How about the 21st at 5 p.m., right?
No, yeah, that's fine.
Or 12 noon?
Noon is good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So to leave it open to the 21st at 12 noon. Right?
That's fine.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, that was an easy one. Moving on to the next one. The next is a public hearing regarding a local law to amend Chapter 60, Section 210 and Section 410, Subsection D of the Code of the Town of Newcastle concerning sign regulations. Can I have a motion to open that public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So just to clarify for people before we get moving on this is not the entire statute regarding sign regulations. This is only a small subsection. So if you're seeing pieces about our business districts, for instance, that are not in this, it's because that's not what we're amending today. So do you wanna give any information?
We've had, the board's had a number of conversations, both in work session and the board's received a number of comments. The draft that's in the packet tonight incorporates some of those comments, and because we're working with a red line, you see them in yellow highlighting. So these are really by way of clarification and sharpening some of the provisions in here with some better, more descriptive language. So in the definition of residential sign, we've added a few words to make it clear that it is the sign, the nature of the sign needs to be non-commercial, but we've said no for-profit commercial sign. It's easier to read it, but I mean, just it's basically these are in the form of clarifications. Another one, a couple of additional examples are provided in the definition of temporary signs, and then in the text of the code itself, again, with respect to the size and location, some clarifying language in this 12A1. There, I know the board's received some additional comments, and you may want to talk about some of those.
You know, again, we're trying to strike the right balance between allowing freedom of speech, allowing people's messages to get out, allowing public events, et cetera, to be displayed while not allowing our town to be really overrun with signs. So that's what we're really trying to do. I think you can see the changes that are highlighted. One thing that's not here actually that I wanted to just get the board's thoughts on, and I noticed this as I'm driving around town, and for instance, I've seen some signs of events that already occurred that are still up, and there's no incentive here to allow people to mandate that people actually take their signs down. So, and I don't wanna put that onus on our DPW department to say, oh, well, yeah, that happened already, there's signs up. It's now our responsibility to take them down. Of course, there's always gonna be one that gets missed here or there that, that's just the nature of putting up signs. But I'm wondering if we should put in some sort of provision where we can fine somebody if they don't take their signs down and there's a significant number of signs. There's
How do you know?
50 signs around
How do you know
town.
who put the sign up?
Well, you may not, but if it's these are for event signs, right? So if it's advertising an event,
So
we
you're gonna fine the Greeley football team?
if they don't take their signs down, yeah, the Greeley Sports Boosters.
You fine the boosters, what if it's parents?
I don't want to fine anybody,
Yeah,
I just want people to take their signs down.
Personally have no desire to fine people.
No, I mean, I don't either.
What about a letter from the town would be?
To whom? I mean, I think that's just an enforcement issue. Such so many
It's always
layers.
been an issue, I have to
It
tell you,
would be
the only
hard to,
person who takes down the signs is John.
it'd be hard to know who's responsible, even if you can point to an organization. I mean, I guess they'd have to take responsibility in the future to do that, but yeah, maybe a letter
Yeah, we
to
could
the
send a letter
organization.
and then say in the future, we won't allow you to put up signs if can't take them down because you're actually in violation of the code now.
Fines are going to be tricky with respect to enforcement.
Mhm.
And one way, if a board really wanted to do that, one way at it would be requiring people to get a permit. But this exercise with amending the local law
That seems
was,
so onerous.
I know the board's intention was to try to lessen
It
the
is,
burden
it is.
and create some additional avenues for speech. So that takes us in the opposite direction, in my view.
Yeah, no, I agree, I just wanted to put it
Just
out
as a-
there and see what everyone
As a
thought.
practical question, right now, and Jill probably knows the answer, or Rob knows the answer to this much better than certainly Ed or us. Who right now, we haven't changed the law, right? We have not touched the law. The law is the law as it was last year. No signs are permitted on public property. Who right now is tasked in the town with removing signs? What specific people, what specific department is tasked with that responsibility?
I would say it falls squarely on Tom DePaul and Steve Davis,
The building department,
building
okay.
department.
And that's how many
I-
people right now it's just 2 people, right?
It's two people, but these are my building inspectors, so.
No, I understand, I'm saying it's
yeah.
Tom and the other building inspector,
Yeah.
so it's just those 2 and
That's
they're
it.
out there reviewing new projects and issuing permits and everything else, right? Why are we not able to have other people deputized to handle this?
We do, but I don't know what other people those would be. We don't have that many people that are out and about. I've got DPW who are out, but they're cleaning storm drains.
No, I get all that. So last fall, who went around and removed signs?
It would have been just Tom and Steve. I don't think it was anybody else, and they brought everything down to the DPW yard, and people could pick them up if they wanted to and put them back in spots that were legal. But yeah, I mean, I have to tell you that the manpower drain on my limited staff is unfortunate, because it meant that if you were waiting for an inspection, you waited a little bit longer, you didn't get an appointment because they were out, pulling signs.
Well, that's why we're hoping that this is going to be clearer and people will
understood.
abide by the spirit of the law here and not,
There's
now
actually-
it's very clear what's allowed, what's not allowed.
And yeah, I'm saying this in part alleviates the issue because
We certainly hope that's the
that
intent.
would be the issue, right?
Right, I mean, I think we had a situation where, which still exists now because we haven't passed this law, where people were and still are in direct violation of the current statute. So that's the current state of affairs. And people, even though they're in violation, are still pretty good at removing their signs. So I would say as an initial foray into this new law, that we assume that they will continue to be as conscientious, so maybe we don't have to, delve into various different permutations of it right now and see if it becomes a problem.
So just one practical question, maybe this is lunacy, but if a town board member were driving around town and saw a gutter cleaning sign on the public right of way, would we be authorized to pull over and remove that sign and bring it to town hall?
I think practically speaking, it's the last thing you wanna do.
No, I understand, I'm asking the question.
I hesitate to give an answer.
Okay. Then you've answered the question by not answering it.
Call Tom or Steve.
Pardon?
Call Tom or Steve, tell them what it is.
Understood.
It's squarely within their scope of authority.
My view, I think first I just wanted to comment that I don't think this is a question of free speech. I think free speech, there's ample opportunities for free speech. Free speech is an issue, it's a false dynamic. But I also don't support the having signs on public property in general. We were just sort of discussing before, and people have mentioned around town, a great example was the Swazi rabbit.
I'm sorry, you support it or you don't support it?
I don't support it on public property. Was the Swazi breeding of signs everywhere. Pull them and then send a letter to him or fine him. Did he know about it, whoever did it? But I just don't support, it becomes more of an enforcement nightmare if it can be on public property. There's nothing keeping it off your personal property. You have every right to have your speech. And we also have certain areas where you can post, we have our triangle where you can post and share.
You can't.
I don't see, I'm sorry?
You can't put anything in our triangle
No,
unless you have a
that's my point, you
permit.
can, exactly, it's still available and you have your own property to do it. I just think it creates just an opportunity to proliferate garbage and I'm not clear, and just maybe I'm misunderstanding, and if I am, I apologize. So when we set forth what a temporary sign is, and it's defined in the statute, and then we sort of break out what can be placed in a not-for-profit, for example, and it's an event. What is preventing the Proud Boys from saying, you know what, we wanna have an event in White Plains, but we're gonna put them on town hall property within the right of way because we have that right for 30 days because we're gonna have an event. To me, why do I want to invite that garbage and that hate nonsense when you as a homeowner living in this community are not prohibited in any way, shape or form pursuant to the statute to share your signs and speak your mind, or in the event you need to spend money for a permit for the triangle, do so. Why are we inviting this to our community? So I object to it. I think it's not necessary and it doesn't limit our ability to share our thoughts and speak our mind.
Ed, to that point, I think nobody could put something on, let's say, town hall front yard because that's owned by the town. And you can only put it in a public right of way that's contiguous with your own residential property. It's also in a business district as opposed to on your residential district, which is all we're looking at here is residential districts. So I think that it wouldn't be allowed, correct?
Only in rights of way, it's not a free-for-all with respect to any town property.
Mhm.
Sure, parks, for example, commercial property, private property, commercial districts, all of that is not what we're talking about.
So, but it would be, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, so if you use Getney as an example, that's public property as a right of way, at least on the initial front piece of it,
That's a state road.
oh, it's a bad example. Another location, wherever it may be, you'd be allowed, it doesn't have to be your private property within that right of way, on your private property, it can be in a public,
Town right of way.
yes. So that, you know, that's an issue.
So I just, quick comment here. Personally, I think that what at least I think we are trying to address is the idea that we had an ordinance on the books that was never enforced. And it certainly was never enforced vis-a-vis the farmer's market or Greeley events. And we don't want to enforce it in those cases. We will have to if we take the approach you just outlined, okay? Number one. Number two, that is like an absurdly overly dramatic hypothetical that suddenly we're inviting hateful signs into our community. So I'm not worried about that. If that happens and we see a proliferation of that, we can come back and reassess this legislation. That's my view, right? I think the idea that we're gonna have this, proliferation of garbage, we have had that in the 23 years I've lived here, every single year during political campaign season. We've had it for Greeley events, we've had it for the farmers market. So what we're trying to do is craft a law, in my view, that makes sense of all of that. Otherwise, we go back to what the law says now, farmers market comes down, Greeley events come down. And yes, we don't have signs on the triangle, and yes, we don't have signs on the triangle on 117. And yes, we don't have signs on Roaring Brook Road. Or we do what we're talking about, which allows those signs to be there without violating our own statute, right? Which I do think creates a First Amendment issue. And we work on policing it, and we hope that the message gets out that you need to take your signs down after the event has passed. And we deal with issues of proliferation and we reassess over time. But otherwise, we're literally back to what I think was a sort of a dead letter statute or a statute that by definition will be selectively enforced, as it was routinely in the past.
So what about as an option, increasing the locations where, in both size and locations where we can permit on town property signs such as the triangle? What would prohibit us from replicating, if that's the right term, the triangle elsewhere where signs can be, for example, on 117 to 120 on that intersection, that's not, that could be a permitted location, or you could get a permit to put a sign there, referencing by Quaker. So you can have at the major intersections, you can have potentially get a permit for a sign. So you could increase that to remedy it, and you're right, that is a dramatic example. I'm obviously using the most dramatic as an example, but politics aside, when the Trump caravans came through, because it's just relevant to this conversation, the people with the flags and there was a lot of upset residents, they were scared and frightened. If they decide to come through and they wanna, notify again, rally in Newcastle, and just an example, is it gonna happen? I don't know, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but why invite it? Maybe the opportunity to expand locations.
Yeah,
is
I guess
option.
maybe I'm I don't know, maybe I don't give people as much credit as you do. I can't imagine that Congressman Swazi's staff are sitting there saying, hey, Newcastle's about to change its sign law, let's go put a bunch of signs there. Of course not. Okay, so I don't think that the Proud Boys or anybody else are gonna sit there and say, wow, we've got fair game to put signs on the Roaring Brook Road Island because Newcastle adopted a new law. So I hear you, but I don't see that. I just don't
I'm looking at it differently though, I'm looking at it gives the ability to the town to take it down. When-
Right, I understand, but
that-
no,
not that you're going
but
to.
having the ability to take it down, in my opinion, means you have to take it down, whether it's the Proud Boys or the Farmers Market or Greeley Sports Boosters. And to me, again, I would err on the side of allowing more speech within limits so that we don't have to selectively allow the things we like. That's the whole point of this law, that's my view. And I think that's what we've been trying to get to, and it's tricky, we all agree, the case law is extremely tricky, but that's what we're trying to get to, in my view.
I think I understand the view, and my response would be maybe part of that solution, if not the solution, is to increase those locations such as the triangle as we call it.
Well, that also though, then I believe also poses a safety hazard if you're suddenly going to allow at a major intersection a proliferation of signs on something tall, like you're saying, like a triangle sign. That to me is gonna cause issues with sight distance, things like that. Like we tried to regulate that, saying you can't have more than a certain number within proximity to another. We did try to regulate that.
And that can be adapted as well elsewhere. I'm not calling for tall signs, but that could be adapted for elsewhere.
One thing, Ed, to Jeremy's point though, can we, in the definition of community signs, where it says temporary signs are intended to play for a limited time in connection with a particular non-commercial event or activity, including, drives of a civic, political, philanthropic nature, can we add with a particular community non-commercial event? So for instance, if somebody's holding a rally in, some other town that has nothing to do with us, can we limit it to community events, which would allow, Greeley signs, things like that, but it might not allow, someone's throwing a rally in New Jersey, we don't necessarily want signs here.
Choking it down to community events would be a big change, right? Because right now, temporary signs, the way it's defined, can be a lot of different things other than a community event.
Right, I'm saying a community, but I'm particularly just clarifying a community non-commercial event or activity. Political signs, all those we're not changing.
So what is community?
It's referring to an event or activity.
Within the community?
Yes.
Immediate community.
We had discussed that originally when we talked about fundraisers, and you said, for example, someone's doing something at Sleepy Hollow Country Club for the American Cancer Society, right? You sort of said that's not relevant necessarily to our community versus, the fire department's having a pancake breakfast. That is relevant to me. So Jeremy's example of, horrendous example, but a Proud Boy rally in White Plains, we could nix that right away by saying it's in White Plains, right? Before getting to our other desires to nix it.
I think it's doable. I guess it's how we do it, and part of the exercise when we draft legislation like this is to try to accomplish the result without unintended consequences.
No, I understand.
Right, so that we'd have to be careful about how we.
I mean, I'd love to modify it to say the community event or activity. We don't need to modify, events of a civic nature.
So just put the word community in front of event or activity?
In front of,
Okay,
yeah.
so my concern with that is that I appreciate that the overwhelming majority of our community goes to Chappaqua Central Schools, but we actually, our residents actually go to 6 different school districts.
Well, we could
but
specify
that
the
could
town
be a
of Newcastle.
community, yeah, that's part of Newcastle,
That's right.
if they.
Okay, so you said Sleepy Hollow, but depending upon, how far out you're going, we have kids going to, Byram Hills, we have kids going to Mount Kisco, we've got kids going to Osseo,
I'm just
to
not
Yorktown.
super concerned about it, cause I've never actually seen any of those signs.
Okay, but the point is that when you call it community and you're talking about, trimming it down, I just need you to be mindful of, who's making that determination and the fact that our neighboring communities are in fact, interspersed. You said, the fire department. What about Mount Kisco Fire Department? It services a significant section of our town. Is that allowed?
But it's a community service.
Yes.
I
Right, so
understand.
that
What
would be
about-
included.
Right, and what about, but we take down Bedford fire departments?
Well, if they
If
serve our
don't service
community,
us,
Yeah, I mean, if
Then
the
yes.
if the Bedford FD came into our town and started putting up signs, I would think we wouldn't allow that. We don't benefit from their service. It's kind of like when I go to a gym, it's kind of like when I go to a
Mutual
gym,
aid's
it's
what
kind of
they
like
do.
when I go to
Like,
a gym.
it's
such a
No, okay, that's a good
I
one.
just-
It's like if you
I
go to a
just-
Giants game, the guys in Lodi are asking you for money for their fire department. I'm like,
Not an issue, you don't have to.
I don't think
You
that
know,
that's.
look, no law is gonna be able
You're absolutely right.
to, encompass every single permutation of every possibility that may or may not happen. I think we just need to do our best here. We know what the spirit of the law of what we're drafting here is intended to do, and that's what we try to live under. And if a law needs to be tinkered at some later date, you can always do that as a community lives with something. You see what changes need to be made. But I think we understand what the spirit of the law is of this proposed legislation is.
Yeah, I understand the spirit ultimately. I think ultimately I think you're gonna be able to share your thoughts and share your views and share your concerns, whatever it may be, on your own property. It doesn't cause all these issues about what goes, what can't go, what can stay. It's prohibited and we can increase the space by where it's allowed. I think that's a better option, but
I hear what you're saying, one thing we were trying to do also is minimize the work of our building inspectors and our enforcement. So there are plenty of signs, for instance, and we just saw it with the school board elections, that may be on people's, what they think, but they're in the right of way in front of their homes, and technically those all needed to be taken down. They weren't enforced this time around, but none of those are allowed. So you would be telling people you cannot have these out there. And then that's something that now, again, Tom's gotta go with a ruler and everybody's site plan and figure out then how this works. We were trying
So then why not
to
just get
make
rid of
this simpler.
I guess to Jeremy's point, I'm just curious, we've eliminated certain public areas, right? We said the triangle is a no-go zone, right? And what else?
The one in front of the
in
Chico's.
front of Chico's and Millwood is a no-go. We've said the right of way on the road adjacent to your property is okay, but I can't go to your house and put one on your adjacent right of way. So you're suggesting we do the same thing, but instead of saying on all public areas, we define up the number of spaces. We say the triangle on 117, the Roaring Brook strip maybe, and you're saying we do that in enough places and then that's where people can put signs. That becomes like the free sign zone. That's sort of what you're saying?
I don't know if it's gonna be the free sign zone because I think it would still have to be permitted.
No. Oh, so you're saying you would allow it there, but they would still have to get a permit?
Well, whatever the current legislation is that allows those signs and those locations, you're gonna replicate that elsewhere.
We have
So-
specific
so-
requirements as to
Yeah,
what
but
permits
those
are allowed. They're not, vote for.
Correct, I get that, but again, we're gonna go in circles because you're still gonna be able to put that on your property.
Right. I think that's an overly restrictive approach to doing it. But look, again, this is a series of puts and takes, and I think that the compromise we're striking, which doesn't lead to the absurd outcome of us having to go around and take down all the signs we kind of are expecting and used to, and in recognition of the fact that, again, at least in my 23 years, I always saw political signs during election season, and it never seemed to be a big problem. So to me, I think we should make the law conform with reality, what we all want, which is for the good signs to remain up, and we'll deal with, proliferation. And if it really becomes a problem, we go back to the drawing board. The original sign ordinance says to avoid, clutter and whatever, but also to allow free expression. Well, if we have to, we revisit it. That would be my approach.
I guess there are really good points on either side of this. The question is the current law better than what we're proposing? Is what we're proposing, improving the situation? So if we stay with the current law, I guess I'm just being repetitive. So many of the signs that we wanna see wouldn't be allowed. Like, would you like the farmer's market signs to all be taken down? I guess that's the question we have to ask. Would you want all the, the Greeley sports and the Greeley events, the theater, would you want all of that to be prohibited? Those are the things that we wanna think about.
Alright, I don't think that's fair, I don't think it's a question to be asked, right? It's not whether I want it, because I think
No,
there's,
I know you don't want that, but
there's
that,
means to share it elsewhere is my
What,
point,
you know-
and other means to rectify it, to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Right. And I didn't mean to say that you would want that. That would be the consequence. So what is the worst evil? Because both of these proposals have drawbacks and inconsistencies and problems. So, we have to ask which is the worst of the evils.
and
Well,
be
I don't think
responsible.
either of them are evil,
Right.
but
Well, it's just
I
a
think
way
that's
of putting a question,
I
perhaps
understand.
overly dramatic as well,
I-
but
yeah,
I understand your point.
yeah.
I hear
My
it.
response is what I keep, what I've said already 7 times, so
Yep.
Right.
it can
Okay.
be addressed another way.
Gotcha.
But I understand your.
Alright, so I think we've probably heard from the board enough, why don't we move to public comments? Anyone here who would like to speak on this? You don't have to.
It is a sign of the times.
Just say your name again
No,
and
I understand, John Earler,
That's
Apple
very
Tree
fine.
Close, Chappaqua, New York. As being one of the most prolific sign posters and taker downers in town, because I ran so many blood drives, and I always made it a point to, it's in the public interest to do it. We would always do it, but I also had a personal rule as I tried to get them down. As soon as the drive was over, I started taking them down. Now, I did miss a few, I tried to, but it's clearly in the public interest to do something like that. The question is now, if you had a blood drive in Mount Pleasant or in Mount Kisco, that's a community thing, and donors go from one to the other in different places. I always made a decision never to put it in another community. If I were running the drive, that's the way I would do it. And not speaking as a member of Rotary here, but we've got Community Day. If we did Community Day signs, that would be in the public interest. I would also say let's take those down as quickly as possible. To put them on signposts, which are town property, wrapped around it, that was fine as long as it was on a timely basis and it wasn't an eyesore downtown or in any of the communities and places I put them up. I put up a lot of signs. I know I paid for them. They were all up there. So in my sense, it's common sense, and we need to do it. I also, as a community member, just like we would see a piece of trash on the street, I would take a sign down that was past its time. Could be timely and commercial in some areas. Suppose somebody was doing something at the Burns, or somebody was doing a public event. Well, once the show closes, that sign should come down. And I brought this up before, but since it seems to be an ongoing discussion, I would do that. Now, let me give you a scenario for consideration. Our ambulance corps has problems securing new members to assist the corps and to do things. An accordion sign or a mini accordion sign up appropriate to sign up to join the ambulance corps is appropriate. You know, where do I put those signs? Well, I might put them on the median, since it was brought up before, in Roaring Brook Road, because that is a place I don't think it would look out of place there. Or when you're driving into a shopping center or anything I could do to assist the ambulance corps. Lord knows I don't think I'm in a physical condition that I could join them, but I certainly could help them market that to get that particular situation done. So we want to know what signs. For example, I call it a half-size accordion. A big accordion sign is really overwhelming, but these little ones that knee highs or whatever might be appropriate. So I just want to make sure that in our interest of helping eliminate visual distractions and things, we don't harm ourselves. Now, the one thing I wanted to bring up that I don't think I've heard anybody mention, and that's paid signage. We've been fortunate, we haven't had paid signage in town. New York City, you can't get away from the billboards. This is the kind of paid signage. I don't know whether you want to put in your code anything to deal with paid signage and where that would be appropriate to do. And you knock on wood, I don't think we've seen that problem here. I hope we never do. But I just wanted to put that out there. As a, pardon the pun, sign of the times, I think it's important and absolutely crucial that every way possible that we notify residents and visitors to the town of events that we are doing. And therefore, as a communication mechanism and method, I strongly encourage that we maintain it and not destroy the reason we're doing signs because of, I'm gonna use the word, legal niceties. We'll just need to do it that way. I'm sorry, I've talked too long already.
Yeah, I have a
But-
question. Question, so when you're talking about the farmer's market, we have a contract with the farmers market. Part of that contract, they're permitted to, I assume we allow them to sign as part of the agreement. We're contracting with them.
Is it?
It's in the contract. So we can choose, I assume, whoever we wanna engage in a contract with. If we don't approve of what someone is selling, for example, we don't have to, the town doesn't have to engage in a contract with them. Anyone who comes to the town is not.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to think of specific examples. I'm familiar with the.
I mean, they're leasing property from us,
so
we're not in a
licensing-
contract for signs.
They're
No, of
licensing
course not, of course
space.
not,
Yeah.
so licensing space.
Right, so it could be negotiated and
right.
included.
Okay, so then,
The lease for the train station,
Yeah.
we deal with the advertising there,
so,
so yes.
and I don't know if this is, possible, like what is preventing, whether it's a dollar lease or big financial lease, to say to the boosters, you can lease, we wanna engage in a contract, you want X space that is on the public right of way, that is public property, you can engage in that lease. And what would prevent us to say, if someone else came along, we said, well, we don't want you to selling I'm trying to give an example, can't even think of tobacco pipes, gosh, can't even think of things.
Well, that's a commercial business.
So I'm just using that
would be
just as an
allowed.
example.
Yeah.
These are interesting questions,
So
but Ed,
why not,
sorry.
can't we legislate certain locations or allow for certain locations if we're in a contract with the party that wants to post the signs?
I think if we're talking about town property like the train station building or the parking lot, and you can certainly build into a license agreement conditions with respect to advertising and signage, but generally in just terms of turning it into some kind of a commercial activity, that's something that the town isn't permitted to do.
Right,
There's no
but so,
authority to
but
do
going
that.
back to the issue of the farmer's market and the boosters, you can engage in some sort of agreement with them, whatever cost is appropriate, which could be nominal, to allow signage among other things at locations, so we can still get the signage that we want while limiting the signage that we don't want.
But at what point does that start to become a constitutional policing of
That seems like a
content
different
of speech?
animal to me than what we're dealing with in the local law, which is regulating from aesthetics, public safety standpoint, right?
Because
You're-
then we
you're-
are
you're-
regulating
we're truly
speech, we're
picking-
deciding what we want to
Yeah,
see
Based
and
on
what we
context.
don't want to see.
That's my question, is if you're, the town doesn't have to engage in an agreement with everyone who comes and says, we wanna do X and wanna sell X, or we wanna have an event X, we don't have to engage in it, we get to choose within reason.
Right, but then whatever the advertising signage promotion is associated with that event is incidental to the activity. We're really licensing the terms and conditions for using that space, whether it's the parking lot or something else. So what are the rules of the road for that activity on that day?
Otherwise, you're just talking about permits, is really what it is. You're asking people to get a permit to put out signs.
It's incidental, but at the same time, it's still what you wanna share, the things that we have the most concerns about would be protected or allowed to happen. Again, the boosters, the farmer's market, the things that we mentioned before, there's still a mechanism to get them their available signage if we were to do this.
It feels like a constitutional law issue that we don't wanna get into deciding
All this
what
does.
signs we.
All this
No,
does,
no,
frankly.
well, it is, but now you're proposing that we say, well, okay, we'll enter into an agreement with you because we like what you have to say, but we're not gonna enter an agreement with you
It's a little
because we
different.
don't like what you have to
It's a
say.
little different than that, but the end result is you get to where I think people wanna be with the right type of signage. But it's ancillary, even if it's a part of the big picture, when you're in agreement to support the boosters.
I'd have to read those agreements on this point, but I also believe that they deal with the advertising and signage on the site. That we don't try to dictate, I don't think we would try to dictate what they can do off-site to promote, advertise their event.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that, I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm not
Alright, should we open this up to more public comment? Alright, Carrie, is there anyone online?
Yes, we do have Cynthia Sheamus.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, good evening, everybody. How is everybody?
Fine, how are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for giving me a minute here. So firstly, on the farmer's market, I do wanna just clarify one thing. It is my understanding that a variety of signs that are not located at the train station are actually contractually provided. So I do not have a copy of that contract, but I am fairly certain that the farmer's market contract with the town actually provides for a few directional signs, such as on 117, pointing to the farmer's market location and things like that. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to ask about is, there was a brief discussion of the proliferation of Tom Swazi signs, but still nothing has been done about them, and they're all over all public property all over town. There was one outside of Grafflin, which is gone now, but they're on almost every intersection throughout downtown. I've seen them in some of the further reaches of Newcastle as well. And so the law as it stands right now is not being enforced at all, and it's certainly something that the board is made aware of. Because I have actually written to the board, and I've honestly mentioned it on social media a few times as well, directly to members of the board, and gotten no response. So the current law is not being enforced. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but if the concerns are about proliferation of signs on public property, then it seems like no better time than the present to start enforcing the law that's already on the books. And so that's the first thing.
But do you have comments on the new legislation? That's
I
really
do,
what the.
yes, but I would actually like an answer on that one as well. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is that when we were talking about there was a really interesting point about I think Jeremy said about like sort of Proud Boys and that kind of thing, and then Chris brought up his idea that Newcastle changed their law and all of a sudden like hate groups aren't going to come flooding in. But I think it is important to remember that even though we kind of think we're a small town, this is where Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton live, and unfortunately that brings with it a lot of scrutiny from people who are, very outspoken in ways that much of our community would consider hate speech. And we've seen a lot of instances of this in the past. And so I just want to kind of remind everybody that this isn't just another small town. This is actually a fairly, high profile in some ways because people still aren't over the fact that Hillary Clinton exists. So there's that. And then circling one thing back to the safety hazard consideration. There are currently a bunch of signs that don't belong on the intersection of 120 and 117. And since that intersection was specifically mentioned a minute ago, I just wanted to mention that apparently there's not a concern right now about whether that's a safety concern because they've been there for now a couple of weeks. So I would love an answer as to why the Swazi signs are all over public property, all over Newcastle. And I believe that is actually relevant to this legislation you're discussing. And then the last point is that I am not an attorney, but I don't understand how there's any constitutional right to free speech when we're talking about public property. I don't see how that's a constitutional issue at all. As a citizen, I have the right to free speech and proclaiming that on my own property, but I don't believe, I mean, again, I may be wrong, but I don't believe that I have a constitutional right to proclaim my free speech on public property. Is that correct or not?
Are we answering all these?
So we're not answering not all of these questions are germane to the discussion that we are looking at tonight, which is a public hearing on a proposed local law to discuss enforcement of a current local law. We can do that at another time. That's not really germane to this discussion tonight. Did you have specific comments on this local law, Cynthia? Like,
Yes.
what were those? I didn't actually hear any.
I don't believe that people have a constitutional right to exercise their free speech on public property. And could one of the 4 attorneys on the board please clarify that?
So, I mean,
They absolutely do.
I'll take a crack at it. I don't know where you're getting that from, but if we allow signs, right? We can ban signs entirely, and it would be difficult for someone to challenge on First Amendment grounds that we have to change our law to allow signs. So the current law right now doesn't allow signs on public property, right?
Right.
That's fine under the Constitution. What you can't do is to say, but we like these signs, so we'll leave them up.
Right.
So I'm answering your question,
That
so
makes
let me
sense. That
finish.
makes
Right,
sense.
so you're right to a certain extent, Cynthia, no one is sitting here on this board saying, we must change the law, because to not do so would violate someone's free speech rights. What we're saying is, we have a law that's existed for I don't know how many years, that's not applied equally. And we can either go around and take down every sign, farmers market, Greeley boosters, and that would be effectively the status quo as it is today under the current law. Or we can craft a law that accommodates free speech rights, and hopefully we can address the proliferation issue. So that's to answer your question on number
Okay.
one. I'll let Jill address the proliferation question, but we don't have the manpower, is my understanding, to take down every sign, and that's the existing law. The new law would actually obviate that to a certain extent, because the new law.
Right, but that new law hasn't passed.
No, I understand, but the point is, we have an existing
Knowledge.
problem with proliferation that has nothing to do with the new law.
Okay,
Right.
right, so I'm sorry, going back to the constitutional right issue, so are nonprofit organizations constitutionally, they have constitutional free speech?
Is that relevant?
Because we're not talking about individuals, it's
I'm not sure that's relevant, but B, I believe the Citizens United case actually does say that corporations are persons for purposes of free speech, so there's that.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
But again,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
what I'm asking,
with
because
Abraham saying
again,
that.
I
That's-
don't know.
But the point is, that's not really relevant to the conversation, I guess.
Well, it is in the sense, what I'm trying to get to is, and actually Jeremy brought this up, which is, if our concern is, we really don't want a lot of, what I'm worried about when I hear this law, honestly, guys, is, well, everybody has to have the right to put signs on public property. And so, right now, we have farmers market and Greeley boosters, and everybody's talking a lot about those. And I'm sure there are a few other nonprofits that, throughout the year put up signs, and of course you have the political signs, which I'm of 2 minds about. Well, no, I'm not. But right now, if the concern is things like Greeley boosters, or any of the other 6 school districts that serve this town. Because I would like to remind everybody that 20% of the tax parcels in this town are not served by Chapua
We
schools.
discussed that already.
Right, but it's not just really boosters, but my point is, if like Jeremy said, why not then have a law that says, as of today, like the law says today, no signage on public property with the exception of those that are contractually permitted. And if you have like a dollar consideration Greeley Boosters agreement annually, or a farmer's market agreement for however much money that is, or another, I don't know, community day or folderol or whatever it might be, then, basically it amounts to a permit situation, whether it's $1 or whether it's many dollars. But I am concerned that we're going to turn Chappaqua into a less bucolic environment. And lots of concern was talked about previously with how our downtown looks specifically and how our community looks. And look, we all spend a lot of money to live here and we all love living here because it's beautiful. I don't like to see signs everywhere. And that's why I keep hammering on this issue, because to me, it lowers property value. It's unappealing, it's unattractive, and many times the signs aren't informative anyway. And so that's why I keep bringing this up. It's not a politically motivated issue to me. It's about not wanting this town to be blanketed with signs. And, this most recent Swazi thing, I bring that up because it's a great example of what I think is going to happen if you pass this law. We're going to see this exact same thing along with, cheap power washing or whatever that is.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. I mean, we had these signs have always been here anyway, so it's not like passing this law is suddenly gonna cause a proliferation of signs. Those are around every election, and so thank you, I appreciate your comment. All right, anyone else have any public comments?
No other hands are raised.
Okay. We'll give it 30 more seconds. So my thought would be we did receive some written comments as well, which the town board can look at. My thought would be, given that we don't have too many comments anymore, we close the public hearing this evening, leaving open again for written comments until 12 noon on the 21st.
You don't wanna keep it open one more term. If no one's gonna comment, they're not gonna comment, but I think this is something that certainly was contested by a lot of people on both sides more recently. So even if no one comes, at least they have the opportunity to share their view one way or another. So I would suggest that you don't close it out because of the passion behind it at times over the past 6 months. And give other people
I mean,
opportunity to hear.
people have had the opportunity, we've only received a handful of comments, so I don't see the need for doing that. People are more than welcome, they have a whole other week to write in comments if they have them, but we have not had a vast number of people commenting, so I feel comfortable closing it, but leaving it open for public comments for another week.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, I don't remember more than a handful of people commenting, sometimes multiple times, but it's been a handful of people, so I haven't seen huge.
If I
Do we
may,
know how many comments we've received, Jill? How many written?
Not many, not many.
Lauren, are you aware?
Yeah, I haven't seen many, but I just wanted to make sure.
Three or four, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks.
so thank you, if I may, I'd like to just get clarification on some of these text changes that we talked about. The highlighted ones, bless you.
Bless you.
In the draft that's before you, is there a consensus that those changes should be made?
We
I'm
also
good
talked
with that.
about putting in the word community.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Community
first, just the
event.
highlighted changes he's asking about.
Right.
I'm comfortable with those.
Yeah, those are fine.
Those are good, but then we also have an opportunity to look at other written comments to see if there might be other
Mhm.
tweaks, is that right?
Well, you're not gonna meet again and discuss it. If you're gonna close the public hearing, I wanna make sure that we've got the language in final form.
Shouldn't we see your final form language before we close this?
Well, we're
Close this
going to
out.
see, look, if comments come in the next week and they're significant, we can always have another public hearing, we don't need to vote on it.
You'd have to
If-
notice it
You'd
again.
have to notice
You'd
it
have to
all over.
notice it again, or work session it if they're not,
Well, just-
You can't change it.
What's
you
just out of
can make
curiosity?
changes if they're not significant. I thought you
But-
can do
yeah.
small verbiage
But you're
changes.
saying we don't have the final draft in front of us.
If you close the
Yeah,
public
we do.
hearing, and you wanna make add a word, subtract a word, make a change like that in the text of the law, you'd have to renotice and reopen the
Okay,
public hearing.
so we can always do that if we get comments that need those type of changes, but we can look at them and decide.
I mean, when you say, what you've said in the past, and I know this from last year too, when you say we're gonna close the public hearing, but leave it open for written comments, if you can't change anything after you've closed the public hearing, why leave it open for written comments? The idea being that if something material came in that made you change your mind, then you would reopen it?
Right, but in this case, we've got a handful of relatively minor word changes that
Yeah.
I think if there was a consensus, we could just make those changes and be relatively
Yeah.
confident, barring the example that, something comes in out of the blue.
I would say we do
Well,
that.
these were in the packet today,
Right,
the
yeah.
highlighted changes as
Yeah.
part of this open public hearing. The only thing that wasn't, which we discussed during the public hearing, was just adding that word community.
And that's what I wanted to come to last. I have a question in my mind, and it's really one for the board to think about. So you can certainly regulate time, place, and manner, right? In terms of your requirements. Is community a time, place, and manner, or is that getting us into substance and content?
Is it the place where the event would be taking place?
It's usually where the signage,
Location.
the location of the sign, so commercial district, residential district.
What?
I was trying to be
The word
creative.
community was meant to be a community event,
No,
not
but
a.
Right, but what is it qualifying? Is it
It's
qualifying?
qualifying the word event or activity.
Right, but is that a time, place, or manner? So the
Oh, I think it's a
the
place.
Well, it's a manner, I think he's saying place is the place where
Places
the
where you're
sign.
posting the.
place is
No,
where you
place
post the
is where the
sign,
event is being held.
time is how long the sign is, the size of the sign, color, illumination, things like that, totally fine.
I guess that's getting into content.
Arguably, you may be crossing a line with community.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather err toward putting it in, and if Bedford Fire Department really has an issue with it, they can bring that to our attention. Again, I don't think we're ever gonna get legislation that's perfect. I think the nature of legislation is that it's never black and white. There are always multiple shades of gray. So I would still advocate to put that in because I think it's a good ad, but I understand what you're saying, but I'm certainly open to that. I don't think we're ever gonna have something that's perfect. And certainly not where this is involved, where you have freedom of speech and everything else.
I would certainly want the temporary signs to be limited to community events.
I mean,
Certainly what I
again, I
would
think
want.
it's great to imagine hypotheticals. It's also practical, it's also important sometimes to think practically. I can't imagine too many people coming here to put signs for events that are not related to our community. So I just think as a practical matter, no, I know it's possible, Jeremy, I'm just saying.
It's not as drastic as that, but like a car shows and.
Yeah, but I'm saying if someone puts that there's a car show in Mount Kisco, okay, but it's gonna be limited, is my guess. So if there's a concern, which is what it's saying, it might be best to not add it.
We're getting at the same place for different reasons, but I'm
No, I know,
I'm in agreement
that's
with
okay.
you,
We're-
because I don't think it's.
The outcome is the same.
As much as I agree with Vicky that we want to, I think that what you're saying is correct in terms of it shouldn't be. I mean, I
Of
don't know.
course,
if
the
it's-
reverse
it's
of that
general,
is-
To be
I
clear,
don't
no,
suppose
no,
it's
to
general
be
for
clear,
that
I'm
principle.
saying I want to also.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right? I'm just saying, I
And
think,
and I wasn't
A,
saying
because
that
it could
we
be,
would
it
be
could be,
allowed to do.
yeah, I'm saying it could be a problem constitutionally, potentially, and I'm saying I doubt that it's going to raise the issue that we're considering in the hypothetical. Cause I just don't see it being someone coming from any distance to do this, so I think
So
we should.
to take exactly what you're saying, but sort of turn it upside down, I don't know, I'd be curious if, you know, someone's actually gonna bring a constitutional claim against the town because Mount Kisco didn't get to put up a sign about their car show. So I would rather put it in because that's the spirit of the law that we want, and the odds of somebody bringing a constitutional claim because they can't put up their New York City event sign here when you're saying it's unlikely that they would do that anyway, I would rather see it here as the spirit of the law that we'd like to promulgate. But I understand what you're
personally
saying.
am not a huge fan, either because I'm a citizen of the United States and also I took an oath of passing a law that I don't think it's constitutional and saying let someone else say it's not constitutional. If I have doubts about it,
But
I would
that's
rather.
what the nature of this law
No,
is.
the nature of this law is we're finding areas that we think are within the gray, but hopefully more on the side of correct. I think that Ed raises a point that to me goes a little too far to say, let someone else challenge it. I personally think we should try to make this law as tight as possible within the bounds of what we think.
That's what I was trying to do.
Ed wants to share something.
We could have this discussion briefly, we could take 5 minutes in executive session, I think it may be more appropriate to have that conversation offline. On
For
the,
advice
on
of
the,
counsel.
I mean,
on
this
the
would be
legal-
advice of
Fair
counsel,
point.
For advice
so-
of counsel,
Okay.
Fair point.
10 minutes,
Okay.
is there a motion?
You mean now?
Now.
Right now?
You mean
Well,
Oh.
why don't we just leave the public
keep it
hearing
open till
We can leave it
I mean,
open then
let's
one
leave it
more
open.
week
because
if
it
we
seems
wanna
very
discuss
dramatic to just then
Yeah,
retreat
yeah.
to, I mean, this is
that.
not,
Well,
we're
we've
not
done
on
that
that
plenty
level.
of times before.
Yes,
Leave it open.
I mean,
I think we leave it open.
I think
I
the
think
appearance
we'll
of
leave it
that-
open then for one more week. Can we hold it next week?
Sure, reopen it, sure.
It's just gonna be a long week.
Let's just, that's okay, I don't think, again, we get hardly any comments on this, so I'm not
It's not a big deal. Okay, so let's adjourn it to the
anticipating a ton
22nd,
of people.
okay?
Perfect. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
We've got our consent, sorry. We have our consent agenda items
So-
and number of resolutions.
does and is there anything in the consent agenda items that anyone would like to take out? Okay, well then we can move to resolutions. The only thing that is not in here also is the appointment of a chair for the BAB.
That's right.
Jill,
Right, yeah, oops.
but that shouldn't be in the consent agenda, I don't
No,
think
it
anyway.
shouldn't,
So we can just do that separately. Okay, so can we move to the resolutions?
What order are you gonna go?
Let's do consent agenda items first. Why don't you start? We
What
should
order?
go start from the left.
I move to adopt the consent agenda as submitted consisting of the following. Do we say as set forth? Can we do that?
Yes, you can.
Sure.
As set forth below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Payment of claims. I move to approve the payment of claims in the amount of $276,203.46 listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detail voucher detail report, both dated June 10, 2022. Checks will be cut and mailed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, June 15, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Sarah?
Your turn.
I move to authorize the hiring of Eric Johnson to the position of 4th grade police officer within the Newcastle Police Department at the annual salary of $75,573, effective June 20th, 2022, on the date Westchester County approves the resignation reinstatement. This resolution hereby amends the one previously adopted on April 26, 2022.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next one, that's you too.
I move to authorize the hiring of the following individuals to the position of recreation attendant within the Recreation and Parks Department to serve as 2022 camp counselors at the corresponding rates as described below, effective June 27th, 2022. Julia,
No, you don't have to.
yes.
Yes.
No, you don't have to say-
I was
set
gonna
forth
say
in the
that.
resolution.
Okay, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So number 4 will be on your agenda next week. The only other one, I believe, is the
Cyber
cyber.
insurance.
Exactly.
Cyber insurance, right?
And then there was one sent at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that was the cyber.
That's the cyber?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Do we want to appoint the chair of the beautification advisory board?
I'm sorry, I can't read her last
Okay,
name.
can I have someone move to appoint Ingrid Scholes as the chair of the beautification advisory board?
Wait a second, for a term, give me 1 second.
I didn't notice.
Her term would be 14 to 24. So do you want to put in a term?
Do we need, for the remainder of her term?
Is that what's typical of a chair?
What's that?
Yeah, it's for her term.
Okay,
Okay.
so I will move to appoint Ingrid Schloss as chair of the Beautification Advisory Board for a term ending September 14th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait, cyber.
Oh, I thought you said that's next week.
No, that has to be
Oh,
Video
workers'
is
comp.
assigned.
So-
I move to approve the proposal from Polymar Access Surplus Cowbell Cyber to serve as the town's cyber insurance policy effective June 11, 2022 to June 10, 2023 for the total annual cost of $32,748.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.